Okay, I'm live. I hope all of you have run out to the front driveway today and picked up your Wall Street Journal and read it cover to cover and ready to work with me today on some of the best articles. What I think that I've selected today are some of the best articles. So I've only got a few today. I think I've got 4 articles. Sometimes I have 7. But if you didn't have the Wall Street Journal out there waiting for you this morning, I did. And you can join with me and going through these articles. And by the way, if you ever want a copy of one of these articles, let me know. I'll see what I can do to get you a link to it. And if you want to follow up further. So hope you enjoyed today's articles. I think I did. And they made me a smarter person by the time I finished it. And maybe I had a few more questions that I didn't wake up this morning with. First of all, health coverage cost is rising. This is amazing. This is one of the issues with the way we do health in this country is our health costs really get buried because of all this. The employer covers a lot of the costs, and then we see a bit of it. So we really don't see it. So the average family health cost right now that the employer pays, right? So for a family, for a year, I want to make sure that's clear, is $21,000 right now. So that's up 4%. That's amazing. I mean, there's a lot of people that aren't making $21,000. So that's amazing. Now that's for a family. I think the individual was a little bit less than $8,000, $800 for an individual. So, by the way, an employee of that $21,000 paid $5,600 of that. So they paid about a fourth of it. So again, you notice that we bury the cost of insurance, and I think it creates perverse actions by the employee, the insured, right? Because you tend not to worry about where you're going and how much it costs or anything because this cost is buried. The deductibles are slowing. By the way, the insurance cost this last year was up 4% year on year. That's a pretty healthy, when the economy is growing 2 to 3%, 4% increase in healthcare costs is huge. And so the average deductible was about $1,400. So when you really look to a family of the cost of that insurance is you have to add what they paid, the $5,600, and then add the deductibles. Again, that's assuming they use all their deductibles, but that puts the number up to $7,000 for a family that's coming out of their pocket before the employee pays another $13,000. So, by the way, the data does not reflect the pandemic effect. The premiums are determined from expenses of the previous year. So next year we'll see some effect from this year. The healthcare costs are down this year. And for a lot of reasons, fear of hospitals, people put off. They just didn't go to hospitals, didn't go to clinics. They thought everybody's sick there and I'll get what they've got. And elective surgeries obviously were put. I'm a case in point where I've had an elective surgery that's been put off this entire year, and may come to fruition later this year, but may not. But it's been put off. So they think premiums could drop 3 to 8% next year, and that would be good news for a lot of families. Give them a little bit more relief next year. And also they've had some immediate relief, I think, on some car insurance policies. If you're like me, my insurance is given me a discount on the next payment based on less miles traveled, less accidents, and so on. So health coverage costs are rising. I'd be curious what the pharmaceuticals are doing. But I think that may be heavily weighted towards some real specialty drugs that maybe if you're not in that area are not covered as much. So next, this is from the opinion page. Remember, and I have to remind you, Wall Street Journal has a conservative editorial page. I don't think the news tilts conservative. I think, and I've often said it's one reason why I picked this and report from this. I think it's a very good, unbiased newspaper. When you get on the editorial page, it is certainly conservative, no question about it. They have a Chinese firewall at Wall Street Journal. They keep the two separate. There's been fights about that recently. The people out on the news pages haven't liked the editorial bent, and they made it known publicly. And Wall Street Journal went right on, just like they always have been. Thank you, Wall Street Journal. I appreciate it. So the article is titled "Saunders Haunts Biden Harris." So we looked at the debate the other night. You saw some non-answers in some areas, especially around the court packing area. And so those non-answers may be hiding the progressive influence this opinion piece is talking about. So in the primary, if you looked at the Democratic primary, what happened was Biden rolled over for the progressive wing, especially Sanders, right? So you started to see that this free college, Green New Deal, fracking, environmentalists, it certainly affected Biden's campaign, and he started changing lots of views around those areas. So, and by the way, it makes sense, right? In the primary, you got to pay attention to the Democratic base. The Republicans supposedly aren't voting, I hope. They've had some cases they have, and vice versa, right? By the way, but they shouldn't be. But it's speak to your base. And of course, now he's in the general election. What do you do? Well, lots of candidates switch, but the Democrats have a real problem right now because there's not a lot. There's a group of moderate Democrats and there's a group of progressive Democrats, and neither one are able to swing the other right now. So what does Biden and Harris got to do? They got to play that in the middle, and that's what this opinion article is talking about. Is Biden and Harris are having trouble doing this. If Trump had some sense about him, and Pence, by the way, and Pence did, and I think he did a masterful job of doing this, they would slice and dice that difference and show it to the American people. So, and say, Biden, Harris, you can't balance these two sides that you're trying to get to vote for you right now. You got to tell your supporters which supporters you're going to vote their policies in. So you notice he went right after, and I wrote down 4 areas, from the opinion article here. He went after energy. So energy is Green New Deal, $2 to $4 trillion, no fracking, no fossil fuels. And of course, you've seen Harris back off that and say, oh, no, we're now allowing fracking. When there's lots of videos out there when her and Biden were saying we're going to get rid of fracking. So Biden, to be honest, is saying, well, we're going to phase it out. So, whatever that means. But he went right after that. He went after the tax hikes. So, Biden said we're going to get rid of the Trump tax hikes. Well, what's unsaid there is part of the tax hikes were about $2,000 a year to a lot of working people. I say working people. This is the Democratic term that they use. But these are people with normal salaries, right? These aren't rich people, and they got a substantial tax break. There's no question about that, right? It's been proved over and over again. It happened. So now what he's wanting Biden to say, and this is really good, and Harris, he's wanting to say, oh, no, we'll keep that part of the Trump tax hikes, and we'll take off the part for the rich people and or the corporations, right? By the way, both pieces of it. But of course, they don't want to do that, and so now Pence came out, said, oh, are you thinking part of the Trump tax cuts is okay? The one that affected the working man, you call it. So, Harris didn't want to say that, right? And I can understand that. Supreme Court obviously went after him about the packing of the court. This is becoming more and more of a problem. I saw some reporters the other day. It's interesting. The media's picked up on this late, but they're starting to get Biden, and he won't go for it. I mean, he's just said, you'll find out when I'm elected. I can't think of another politician that I've ever heard of that said, if you want my position on something, you have to elect me first. This has the repercussions from Pelosi saying you have to vote for it before you find out what's in it on the Obamacare deal legislation. So they just can't answer, and Harris was very embarrassed by this, and went off into this Abraham Lincoln story that, by the way, turned out to be false too. It won't matter. There's 20 million people that heard it, and 1 million people will find out it was false. So it's what's done is done, and it worked for her. And she did a good job. And then terrorism. Joe really has got a history of not, the so many attack the Americans going after him. He backed off on that. So he's really got a history of being very timid on attack and terrorism. And so these four are the ones that articles highlighted: energy, tax hikes, Supreme Court, terrorism. Now, you say, well, does it matter? Because lots of people have already picked their side, and I think 5 or 6 million people voted already. Well, 20 million people watched. And because of that, because of Pence being laser focused and going to those, he proposed a real difference between the two parties. Because remember, the Biden-Harris is all about COVID right now. You can't really address much else. Economy's a little bit, but economy's coming back, and I think lots of people believe that it'll come back. So they're really attacking his leadership around the COVID and making it about Trump. Okay, that's what they want to do. They make it about Trump because people don't like Trump. I don't like Trump half the time. I just, and those viewers of my program have clearly heard me say that. Regardless of whether I vote for him or not, I don't like what he says sometimes, and I think it's disingenuous. But Pence, I thought, did a masterful job in very cool, calm, collected manner of saying, here's the differences. Now, if you're okay with that tax cut, if you're okay with that packing the court, then that's the person you want to vote for. And I like that. So, and by the way, the media is certainly making about Trump too, and helping in that process. So, Trump needs to make it about Biden and Harris. That's going to be difficult for Trump to do. Trump is about himself. Whether I vote for him or not, I recognize what Trump does. He's a typical New Yorker in my mind. I lived there for a little bit. I understand it more than most. And he's about himself. And instead of saying, I did this, I did this, I did this, if he could clearly delineate like Pence did at the next debate, I think it'd go a long ways about telling a lot of people, excuse me. I'm supposed to prepare that before, and I don't sometimes. So Trump, we'll see what the next Trump comes out if he's learned a lesson from watching the Pence debates. I doubt it. I think he said that's Pence's style, not mine. I have a different style. The American people love me, and I'll be me. And that's okay. I like that Trump is out there, and I like that there's no mystery about him. He's no Obama. I never could figure out, when he paused before he spoke, I never could figure out what he really wanted to say, right? And so I lost trust in him because of that, because I thought, I wonder, this is too well thought out. But anyways, moving on. Third article, who needs moderators? So yesterday somebody had a comment about this, and I thought it was interesting because it tied into an article on the opinion page today. that, they're talking about Trump has decided to skip the next debate if it's virtual. And I think probably a lot of people agree with him that that would be not a favorable format for his type of debating. I'm not sure a preferable debate format at all, right? Just doesn't work. They can have, plexiglass through the ceiling and separate them too, and still have them on a stage. And so I think, he's not going to go that way. And maybe it's a method to delay it for a few days until he gets better and so on. I don't know. But, this moderator, a lot of you people aren't old enough to realize this is a pretty new process. It just started in 1988. And that's when the nonpartisan committee, on the Presidential Debate Commission came into play. And then you started putting this moderator in place. But I got to tell you, and I don't care which side of the aisle you're on, the first thing you look at is which moderator have they chosen, right? And why do you look at that? Why would you even care, right? Because they're not supposed to be a factor. Well, because you know better. You know that they're a factor, right? So you immediately decide, is that moderator going to be on my side or on their side, right? And so, so that's the first thing is the moderation person is suspect. You're going to say, and you can take Susan Page as an example. She's writing a book on Pelosi that by all accounts is very positive on Pelosi. So if you're anybody on the right, immediately say, we're in trouble. But you could go the other way too. I think on the Fox, Chris Wallace, they probably picked the most liberal conservative, if you could call it that, on Fox. And it came down pretty hard on Trump. And I think lots of conservatives saw that. And some of the questions were that way. So remember, we have got this moderator we put in the mix of this debate when we say, wait a minute, we want to hear from the two candidates, but we put this moderator in the middle. And then also we get worse. We let the moderator decide on the issues to be discussed. Why? What unique gift does the moderator have to decide the issues that 20 million Americans want to hear? So now you can do it another way. You can go to a town hall format. By the way, that was, I think, the next debate was supposed to be that. And then you have people from the audience stand up and ask what I call dumb questions. They do not represent the 20 million Americans out there watching this. And I got to tell you, if you don't believe that, just watch a group of people watching a debate and watch them cringe with every other question that's asked. Every other question is good. Every other, that's in my estimation and experience. So it doesn't work well. The town hall doesn't work well either. And you may get a question that's real important to that voter, but it doesn't represent a cross section. So I really think the debaters themselves, the candidates themselves, have traveled the country. They know the questions they want to ask the other candidate. And I think they'll be the toughest questions out there. I don't think any moderator could ask any more tougher questions. Let them go mano a mano. Let them go one-on-one. The great debates of the past did that. And so I'm like the commenter was yesterday, do we need moderators anymore? I'm convinced they don't help at all. And in fact, maybe hurting. In fact, by the way, the next moderator after Susan Page was, I forgot the guy's name, but they got some tweets where he's tweeting stuff that seems to be anti-conservative, anti-Trump. So already you've got a group of people that are saying, we're not getting a fair shake. So get them out of the mix, get them out of there. And by the way, maybe the commission has taken on too big of a role here and is off making decisions on their own. It certainly appears the decision the other day to go virtual was made without consulting either campaign. And it seems like they're now driving the bus instead of the campaigners, and we should change around there. So who cares what the moderator thinks? And I'm there right now. For instance, by the way, if you want to look at, and I think you can go both ways, but Susan Page the other day, by the way, she's from USA Today. There's no question USA Today is a left-leaning paper. By any estimation, by anybody, and most people on the left would acknowledge that. I haven't read it in a long time. It's a dumbed down. They used to have a rule that a 7th grader could read it, and that irritated me. That doesn't challenge me at all. So, but anyways, I digress, as I'm good at. But Susan Page had one of the questions to Trump saying, the Trump rapid recovery is not happening. I emphasize the word not. The Trump rapid recovery is not happening. And so went on with a question like, so this is an example of a moderator. Now you could say, well, she did that because she didn't like Trump. I don't know, but it's a bad question. And first of all, it may not be factually true. In this great time of the pandemic, we've lost 22 million jobs. By the time of this debate, 11 million of those jobs have come back. So is that a rapid recovery? Pretty amazing. I don't know if it's rapid, but so you can argue both sides, and you can see that it just gets people heated up when it's not necessary. And the question could be worded better, but obviously she's got an audience too. So oh, and by the way, the pack the court, if you want proof, the pack the court question did not come from Susan Page, didn't come from the moderator. It came, by the way, from Pence forcing that question. To my earlier comment, when that's a huge issue right now, the moderator didn't have it on her list on purpose. You decide. You can't read someone's mind. I'm not going to do that. So I think go mano a mano. I'd show you. Let me get this started.
He has refused to do this.
So
the American community, almost everywhere he goes, treats him with the kind of unction, the kind of satisfaction at posturing carefully for his flagellations of our civilization, that indeed, quite properly, commands the contempt which he so eloquently showers upon us. It is impossible, in my judgment, to deal with the indictment of Mr. Baldwin unless one is prepared to deal with him as a white man. Unless one is prepared to say to him the fact that you're...
So, if you want to go back, and I suggest really people do this, if you want to go back and look at great debates, and this is, if you want to learn to think deeply about subjects, go back and look at great debates. Go to YouTube and pull up every William F. Buckley, whether you're a conservative or not. He debated a lot of people on the other side of it, and you'll see James Baldwin, who is a great debater himself, an African-American man that debated him on a great subject, by the way, that's come up right now, and it's whether Black Americans have contributed to the way American rose in society and how that happened. But you can see that two debaters, James Baldwin is not jumping up. He's not making faces. He's attentively listening to William F. Buckley and listening to what he says, because they're a debate. They're going back and forth with comments. You also see that William F. Buckley treats him like an equal. And even though he may disagree, and does disagree, by the way, with many of his points. So, but I would encourage you, if you want to look at some great debates, go back. Look at Jordan Peterson, by the way. YouTube's got a lot on Jordan Peterson, and he thinks through answers. And by the way, what I like about Jordan is I think some political characters ought to use is that occasionally say, I don't know. I haven't studied that subject. I need to go off and spend a lot of time. I'm not going to give you an off the wall answer. So I think that's very important. So who needs moderators? I say fire them all. Put them on the unemployment list. Article number 4. The court grabs the census. So progressives are using the courts now to hijack the census, but what they're really hijacking is congressional reapportionment. And so there's a lot of history. It's a very complicated subject, and I work on my articles very clearly in the complication area because if it's too complicated, it doesn't come across in a 20-minute podcast. But in 2018, they moved the census date from July to October. Well, then in April, in the midst of the pandemic, they went back and said, move it to December 31st because we're going to have trouble getting a good count. Congress came back, who controlled, by the way, the census. It's legislative action that controls the census, not presidential power, not court. Okay, the legislation has given them broad powers to do a count of the citizens of the U.S. Actually, citizens is the right term. Doesn't mean you're legal or illegal. You're in the U.S. And so there's a lot of controversy on that subject too. But the Congress said, no, we're not going to delay it anymore. We're done with it. You get the count done. So the Census Bureau compressed the timeline, worked hard on it. And of course, now some people have gone to the courts again. Now this is the battle we're in because of poor legislation and because you can use the courts. And by the way, the Ninth Court is a great court to use if you're a progressive. You can go to them and get things done you want to get done. And so the Ninth Circuit Court has said continue counting through October, the end of October. Well, they can't meet their deadline at the end of October to report to Congress if they do that because they're still counting and then they're going to go present what their totals are. So now we're in a tough spot, and it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and we'll see what happens in that Supreme Court. I'm hoping that they undo what the lower court did, let the Bureau finish their report, their count. They're pretty much finished right now, and I'll show you some numbers that show that. So, but everybody's got their place to work on, right? And their individual things that they're focused on. So many people are suing because the census count in one poor area of one area they believe to be undercounted, where in the rest of the U.S. is primarily counted. And here's the stats. So the self-completion ratio, that's you and I that get the count, they get the form in the mail, we go to the internet, we fill out everything, and we're done. So that's called self-completion. Nobody had to come after us and say, you forgot about this, would you help it? So that's a key gauge for the accuracy of the census. That exceeds the 2018 projections. So it's doing very well. As of Thursday, 99.8% of the population's been enumerated, been counted. Enumerated is a fancy word for us intellectuals to use. So in 35 states, it's 99.9%. Okay. My bet is those mostly are red states. But because of the population density and everything, that's why I say that. But it's a big deal. Congress seats, somebody's going to lose congressional seats. We know that, right? Somebody's going to gain some. My bet is Arizona's going to gain some. I live in Arizona. My bet is we're going to gain some. California may lose a few with the outflow. We'll see where it really is. And by the way, federal money. Every time federal money is doled out, they use census numbers to figure out how that division works. So, by the way, Trump's Justice Department is asking for a stay. They're saying don't let these lower courts mess this up. We're almost done. Let's go. And by the way, my experience in life with these is you never can get these numbers perfect. And, you know, New York, by the way, is upset because a lot of people went out to live in their second homes, right? And they're no longer in New York, and they think they're not going to be counted. And there's all sorts of issues out there that the pandemic has caused that may affect the numbers. So we hope the Supreme Court agrees on that stay and says, let's not mess with this anymore. Let's get on and make the presentation of where the census counts changed, and get on with the congressional seat, the reapportionment of the congressional seats, and use that for the federal money that everybody is just waiting for. So that's today. That's today's Wall Street Journal. Hope you enjoyed it. Appreciate your comments, and I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.